Several notable Xbox influencers have publicly withdrawn their support for the brand following media reports claiming that the first-party studio Xbox games could start appearing on PlayStation. Description of all of this stuff. Notably, Xbox influencer took to Reset Era Forum to confirm they were taking steps to wind down their account following the reports. Klobrille is one of the most well-known personalities in the Xbox community with over 158,000 followers on X. Wow. Including Microsoft's gaming boss Phil Spencer, Xbox president Sarah Bond, and virtually its entire marketing and PR leadership team. The account is known for creating faux Xbox marketing images, which are regularly shared by Xbox bosses. On Monday, said the supposed change in strategy from Microsoft had made them reconsider their support for the Xbox brand. Klobrille, this time listening will not be enough. This time execution, credibility, and connection to previously made statements and moving towards fans is all that will matter. For me, for your brand, for your community. What would you say if this deal was to exchange some first-party titles like God of War and Horizon to Xbox for some first-party Xbox? Spider-Man 2 and Horizon didn't make their numbers despite Sony leading on hardware. Just saying. It's not the strategy change itself I have problems with. More games for more people isn't a bad thing, even if this clearly is a one-way street. It's more about already made statements are about to be drawn obsolete, resulting in a breach of trust and credibility. I want to be clear, like I understand the feeling of betrayal in that Xbox previously suggested that they were getting these studios to make games that were exclusive for Xbox, and now that these games seemingly are not going to stay exclusive forever, they are therefore breaking promises and breaking trust, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I just personally, I don't see it as that big of a deal to bring a game like a year or two after launch to another platform. I just don't understand why people are losing their minds about it. It's still going to be available, as far as we can tell, on Game Pass day one. So you're not going to have to pay for it any more than anybody else. Whereas PlayStation gamers will have to pay full price for it, presumably. And we're also talking about it being exclusive to Xbox and Xbox Game Pass on PC for a while, like a year plus. So I understand, and let me be clear, I would agree it's an issue, and I would be upset too if they're like, yeah, we just bought all these studios, we're going to start bringing everything day one to PlayStation as well, and we're just going to be a multi-platform publisher, we're going to kind of give up on the hardware. That would suck. Yeah, that would suck. But I can understand why they're trying to do it that way business-wise. I still don't think it's a great idea, but I can understand why they're doing it. As a customer, as an Xbox gamer, I would be frustrated by that. But as like all of the leaks even to this point have been like, oh yeah, they're gonna bring a game from last year, early last year, to PlayStation, and then maybe Sea of Thieves, which has been out for years, they're gonna bring that as well to PlayStation, and maybe a couple of others after they've been released for a while. And I just don't understand what the big drama is like. But I mean, again, at the end of the day, it's all about perception. So if the Xbox community actually is very upset by this, Xbox needs to respond to that. Right now, it seems that there's a very vocal minority of people. 5,000 people favorited this tweet or post, I guess. 5,000 is not very many, okay? In the context of Microsoft's business, this is a rounding error. So I want to be clear, like, just because you're hearing a lot of people whine about this does not mean that this is a common thing. One of the other people I always go to for thoughts on Xbox stuff is, of course, MrMattyPlays. Mr. Matty, friend of the channel, longtime fan of Matty's. And he is definitely, I mean, his stuff is primarily tied around Xbox. He makes a lot of Xbox-focused content. That's kind of like, he has a whole podcast based on Xbox. But he can generally keep a level head with this stuff. So he's, just to be very, very clear at the outset, I would not, yeah, Matty's a longtime friend of mine. I'm a longtime friend of Matty's. Matty's a friend of mine. I love Matty dearly. And I appreciate Matty because he's a fan of Xbox, but he doesn't tend to get into the trenches of fanboyism that other people get into. Like he's just somebody that likes Xbox. Like that's all it really is. He doesn't go into the full like fanboy craze. You know, he actually uses his brain. Yeah, basically. It's like he can actually think critically, which is refreshing.
News week, huh? Is this what it was like with Sega leaving the console market? Because I was too young to register any of that. I had a Dreamcast and I loved it, but I had no idea any of that was going on. I was way, way too young. But for me, I remember picking up my original Xbox with my dad in Best Buy, and to think that I'm going to live through them potentially exiting the console business in a meaningful way is crazy. to think about. And Xbox has watched these rumors spiral for weeks and weeks and weeks, which was largely irresponsible because there should have been some moment somewhere to put out the fire, stop the bleeding, but they let it keep going and going and going. And it was last night, February 4th, that just everything on social media came to a head. I was sitting here just pounding out my game script for like 5-6 hours. My Discord mentions light up. What happened? And I caught up. And like I said, Xbox may be leaving the console business. Phil Spencer wrote on his Twitter account, "We're listening and we hear you. We've been planning a business update event for next week where we look forward to sharing more details with you about our vision for the future of Xbox. Stay tuned." And the way I look at it is that since there was no manner of any kind of putting out doubts or fear or trepidation about the future of the platform, it likely means that there is truth, strong truth, to the rumors and the reports that have been ongoing.
I agree. The fact that they've refused to squash them suggests probably that this is real. I think that it's pretty much confirmed that they're doing something very, very different now. And I think no matter which way you look at it, it is weird that Xbox has waited so long to just clearly state what their plans are. I know they had a plan for an event late February, but now they're moving that up. So there's been some delays in it, but I think they should have been more upfront earlier on for sure.
Not just that Xbox games are going to PlayStation and Switch, which I think people were kind of ready for with smaller games, but major tentpole exclusives that you thought were building blocks for Xbox are leaving the platform sooner than I think anyone expected, sooner than anyone I think who's within the ecosystem deeply is comfortable with. The meltdowns on social media have shown us that much. And they're going to PlayStation. I'm talking games like Indiana Jones, Starfield, and much more. We're going to get into a plethora of reports here. So let's not delay any further, right? Let's begin at the top with, I think, was the backbreaker, and it came from Tom Warren of The Verge with an article titled "Microsoft Weighs Launching Indiana Jones on the PS5." They say Bethesda's upcoming Indiana Jones game is also tentatively set to launch on Sony's PlayStation 5 console. We got our first glimpse of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle during the developer direct last month, where it was announced for Xbox and PC. A source familiar with Microsoft's plans tells The Verge that Bethesda is also considering bringing it to PS5. A new multi-platform approach for certain Xbox games is emerging inside Microsoft, we're told, with the company weighing up which titles will remain exclusive and others will appear on Switch or PlayStation 5 in the future. Indiana Jones appears to be part of this new wave of multi-platform games. While Bethesda will launch its Indiana Jones game first as an Xbox console exclusive, it's currently set to have a rather short period of exclusivity, we're told. A release for PS5 is being considered for some months later, with Bethesda tentatively targeting a December 2024 launch for the Xbox and PC versions.
What's interesting also is that we know that with Blade, there's been weird expectations from Marvel. And I don't know if Disney's involved with that, but well, Disney owns Marvel, don't they? So I guess they would be involved with it. But Disney has very specific requirements and expectations for some of these games whenever they license out their IP. And so it seems to me very possible that that is also being applied to Indiana Jones, where they are expecting however many millions of units sold, that's what needs to happen, or millions of units redeemed, or whatever they would call it for Game Pass. And one of the ways Xbox is going to help hit those targets is by also releasing it on PlayStation 5 relatively quickly within like a 12-month period or something like that. Yeah, contractual sales requirements for Marvel are crazy. Wasn't it like 10 million copy sales or something like that? Yeah, it's basically why, if you guys were wondering why, like they would release Spider-Man 2, and then within like a month, they start bundling Spider-Man 2 in PS5s included in the box, you know, so you get the game as you buy the console. It wasn't necessarily because they were like, ooh, now somebody that was like, ooh, I don't know if I want a PlayStation 5, now they'll get it. They were doing that because then they can count that as a unit sold. So even if they sell, you know, the PS5 is $500 and they sell it with the game included for $500 as part of a bundle, you know, so you save some money, basically get the game for free, right? They can do that, but then just discount the console on their books and then sell the copy of the game so that Disney is happy that they sold that unit. So there's a lot of trickery that PlayStation has had to do to boost those units for some of those games, but that's just because in order to get those IP with Disney, they've had to make some of those contractual agreements to just sell ridiculous numbers of these games and move them. So it's very possible that a similar thing is happening with Indiana Jones also being a Disney IP, and then also with like Blade and some of these other games that Microsoft has also licensed. The difficulty with Xbox is that they do not have the player base that PlayStation does, not even close.
Exact timing and platform availability for Indiana Jones and the Great Circle could change, particularly as Microsoft's new multi-platform approach for Xbox games hasn't been finalized. And they mentioned here about what's going on with Sea of Thieves and Hi-Fi Rush, which were the first reports of Xbox games going to PlayStation. Yeah, when you think of major IP games coming to Xbox, the first kind of shadow of doubt appeared with Blade. When you looked at what was happening with Blade, there were question marks about its exclusivity because there was no comment from Bethesda, no real comment from Xbox, no Game Pass logo. The big question was, why are you taking away from your own excitement? And I think we now know why, because there were discussions ongoing even during that point of what will be exclusive and what won't be. What I think is going to be the most fascinating to watch incompetent communication Xbox tackle, because I like some of the things they've done, but man, their communication for years has been garbage. And I am
absolutely agree. It's crazy. Even something little that you would think would be so easy, where like they have a big game coming out. And so what do? All of the studios that are under the Xbox umbrella, they should all tweet out, "Congratulations, Bethesda, for launching your newest game. That's awesome. We can't wait to play it." Or like what Sony does with some of their stuff, where they'll have studios create concept art of like Aloy chilling next to Spider-Man or something, or Kratos. And then it's like, excited for the launch, can't wait to jump in. And it's just like a fun little thing that goes viral on social media. People like it, people see it, like, oh, that's cool, that's right. I love Horizon, and now God of War is coming out. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's cool. They don't do like hardly any of that. Starfield, they did a little bit better, but there is a lot of like, it's all disjointed. It's all disjointed. And I think it's kind of a reflection of what their approach has been for a while, which is that they view basically each studio separately instead of as part of this big umbrella. And I think that's one thing PlayStation has done really, really well, is that they find a way to frame these things and these games as being, no, you're part of the PlayStation studios. You're no longer just Naughty Dog. You're no longer just Santa Monica. You're no longer just Bend Studios. You are part of PlayStation. There are expectations, there are standards, there are things you need to do and things that you cannot do as part of our group. It's an exclusive club, but once you're here, you're family.
I'm going to watch with my popcorn in hand and see how they attempt to explain to the purchaser how.
Okay, come on. Let's get Luke a Matty earring. Calm down. Okay. Dude, my ears are already so big. The last thing I need are like gemstones calling attention to them even more.
Some games will be exclusive, but others won't. What the rationale is, why there's even a reason to own an Xbox at this point, and how many people are going to be so pissed off when we talk about Starfield here and how it leaves Xbox. I feel bad for the people who bought into Bethesda Game Studios and said, you know what, that's a compelling exclusive right there. I got to pick that up. And they buy their Series X or their Series S for that game. And then you see this a couple months later. I
think that was maybe like 15 people. Like the big story around Starfield when it came out was that it apparently didn't move a lot of consoles or new subscriptions to Game Pass, which could have been the final nail in the coffin, where executives were like, okay, Starfield, huge exclusive, tons of hype around it. People were super stoked on it. And even that didn't cause a lot of sales to come through and didn't move a lot of hardware. We got to figure something else out. Even if our biggest exclusive ever is not doing it, what are we going to do? Like, come on, we can't keep doing this. And with all of this, it's just like, I think if it ain't broke, you don't fix it. What's going on at Xbox is broken. Like, they've been trying years to overcome these difficulties and they just seemingly can't manage it. And I think they stand another chance at the next console refresh, 2026, 2027. They could kind of reframe things if they actually do have the most powerful console, if they have the best controller, if they actually can go and from a hardware perspective provide the best package and exclusives. that could actually start to turn the tide, especially because it seems like a lot of people in the gaming community, like a lot of them will basically decide which way they're leaning for each generation at the start of the generation, which one they buy into for $500, right? And if they don't provide a compelling enough case right at the outset of the generation, they're just going to go with what they've already been playing on, which is, oh, I played PS4 mainly last gen, so I'll just do a PS5, I guess, because there's not much reason to buy an Xbox Series X, so I'll just do that. And that's what a lot of people did. That's what I did. I was like, granted, I ended up getting both around the same time because I do this for a living. But a lot of people were like, I'm a PS4 player. Xbox doesn't really have any reason to get an Xbox right now. So I'm just going to get a PlayStation. Maybe later I'll get an Xbox, but right now I don't really need to. So I think it's just a matter of time before they have a chance to kind of reinvent themselves. But even with this, I mean, everybody's like, there will be no reason to buy an Xbox anymore. Maybe for Disney stuff, it's like 3 months later they bring it. But it seems like the general vibe that they're giving off in these leaks is that they need like a year of it exclusive on Xbox, and it comes to Game Pass day one. If you think that's not compelling to people, I think you gotta kind of realign and reassess, because for most people out there, the idea of paying $15 and getting whatever games are releasing from Activision Blizzard, King, from ZeniMax and their whole portfolio of studios, or any other Xbox studio, and a lot of third-party games too. $15, get all of them, and a lot of these big AAA games day one. That's a huge compelling reason to have an Xbox, especially if you get those games exclusive for months or a year or years. I think that's compelling to people. I think so. I know for some people, they're like, no, it doesn't matter. It won't matter. But for a lot of people, that is a huge money saving perk that Xbox offers that PlayStation does not have at all.
That's got to sting. But when you look at the quarterly earnings reports, you see how content and services were up, mostly thanks to Activision Blizzard, and the game revenue was up, mostly thanks to Activision Blizzard. But guess what only went up 3%? Console hardware sales. And I think it just shows that with console hardware being in line with the sales of the Xbox One right now, it just shows to me that big games like Starfield or the knowledge of Activision Blizzard being injected into the ecosystem moved a lot of games and moved a lot of subscription services, but it didn't move many consoles at all. With that, I believe Xbox is done pretending they're in the console war, which they have been losing 2-1 for 2 generations straight now, and are going headfirst in a direction that makes more sense for their business, which is something that I don't think many people are ready for. If I were to...
Yeah, Xbox is just changing it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not working. They're doing something else.
I have a theory, bit of speculation here. My read of the situation is that there is a little schism ongoing inside Microsoft right now. I see the bean counters like your Satya Nadella, your Tim Stewarts, versus like the gamers in Sarah Bond and Matt Booty and Phil Spencer, the faces that people know and love. And when I look at comments that Phil...
We do love his face. We do love his face. We know it and we love it.
...has made versus what Tim Stewart has said in the past, where Tim Stewart especially was like a fire starter in this sense, and then Phil pretty much erasing his comments shortly thereafter, and then Satya Nadella, where he said that Xbox games are coming to Xbox and consoles, which pretty much spells out what it is. I see that Microsoft is winning over, because as Xbox has climbed the ladder as now the 3rd biggest part of Microsoft, they see money in it, and it's time to extract all the value out of it. That doesn't make it okay, so to say. I'm not afraid to say that I think Xbox is making potentially an Xbox One era level mistake here. I do think the future is without a walled garden, but much like with the Xbox One, I also think Xbox is
Doesn't he just look like a guy that would destroy a company? You know, like that's the one thing I've always thought about this guy. Every time I see him on screen, I'm like, he looks like he could destroy a multi-million-dollar or billion-dollar business. He just has that vibe, you know? There's just something about him. Yeah, you look like you could burn it all to the ground. All to the ground. It's just funny to me. Jesus. But I think like, oh no, they're gonna bring games to another console after a year. Is this akin to them basically pitching the Xbox One as a cable box that also plays games? No, I don't think they're even close to comparable. There was also a lot of anti-consumer stuff with the Xbox One where they were like, there was that famous story, I think it was this guy actually, where a journalist asked him, so the Xbox One is only always online. It has to be online to play games. What about people that don't have good internet connections? And he was like, well, we live in the 21st century. People have internet. It's okay. It needs to be online to be able to play. Okay. Well, what about, and then this is what they said, what about veterans overseas, like in military bases, where they don't have consistently good internet connections, but they play like Madden together or Call of Duty together in between operations and stuff when they're on the base? And he said, oh, well, you know, we're not going to pretend like the Xbox is for everybody. It's just like, there are some things that might be true, but that you shouldn't say because they look really, really bad. And going to, yeah, he said get a Xbox 360 for offline play. Yeah, it was just like when you are asked a question about like people serving in your country's military, you know, fighting the good fight, and then you're like, yeah, it's not for them. You shouldn't be surprised when people are upset with you. And so as a result, I mean, I just don't think it's comparable to be like, yeah, they're going to bring some of these games to PlayStation charging full price, but everybody else will get it included in their subscription for free. I don't understand how you could say that that's comparable, but
way ahead of the curve on this one. I don't think they're ready. And certainly I think fans were pretty willing to accept that this would be their fate. Like eventually Xbox games are going to leave the platform thanks to Game Pass, and how to sustain that, you need to get more subscribers and you have to go to every service, every screen, every piece of hardware imaginable. But I think that pivot people were expecting was going to come at the end of the generation when a vision had been complete. A mid-generation overnight pivot after one of your biggest years of continuous exclusives, from Forza to Minecraft Legends to Hi-Fi Rush to Starfield, and yes, we'll even throw Redfall in the mix, to now this, says to me that the higher-ups looked at some sort of number or lack of sustainability and said, yeah, we're going to lay a ton of people off. We're going to reorganize this gaming business, and we are going to build this thing to last, and we are going to do that by selling it to everybody. I have some more thoughts. I'll get into that shortly, but it's not just IP that you never knew about that we're going to be exclusive on Xbox. It's like long-standing stuff, such as Video Game Chronicles reporting here. Microsoft is reportedly considering bringing Gears of War to PlayStation. That's according to Giant Bomb's Jeff Grubb, who was elaborating on recent claims that Microsoft is working on a new initiative to release more Xbox exclusive games on other console platforms. Quote, the other one that I've heard that's definitely under consideration, it doesn't mean that it's going to happen, but it's in talks, is Gears of War, end quote, Grubb said on Monday. Grubb also said that Microsoft was at one point planning to publicly explain its new initiative at the end of February, but that given the mounting speculation, there's a chance of an official announcement could be brought forward, which we just talked about at the start of this video. So yeah, I'd say there's 3 series that are synonymous with Xbox. My lovely co-host, Lord Cognito, always called it the burger, fries, and shake combo. Halo, Forza, Gears. And the idea of those leaving the platform definitely spells the end of Xbox, as it is the end of console wars. Gears of War, I know it may not be as, if you will, prominent or recognizable as Halo. That going to PlayStation, throw in the white towel.
Forza though, like Forza's the last game that I think has been regularly reviewed well and received well. It seems like most of the stuff from the like Gears of War side, and then of course also with Halo, has been really mixed recently. Like we had Halo Infinite, which initially reviewed well, people enjoyed it, but then their post-launch plan for the multiplayer was non-existent. I mean, it was laughably terrible. It was real bad. And some people still play it, but I think at the very least, you have to admit that Halo has not been in a good place for a while. Is Forza bad? Maybe I'm not a big racing gamer, so I'm just looking in from the outside, so I don't really know, but that was at least my impression, but maybe that's wrong. And then Gears, I also feel like Gears has been in a really weird place for a long time, where like they tried to reinvent it into just Gears 5, and I think the last one wasn't received too great. Like, I don't know, it just seems like they've generally struggled to get their feet under them. So like the 3, even by his description, the 3 mainstays of Xbox, the whatever he said, burger, fries, and shake combo, all 3 of them seemingly are struggling. Sport is bad, Horizon is great. Okay, well there you go. Anyway, but the point is, like, the 3 pillars of Xbox have been really struggling, and so have console sales. Every part of Xbox's business has been struggling, and then it was supposed to be saved by Game Pass, but Game Pass memberships have basically plateaued. It's not really growing as far as anybody can tell, which is why they stopped reporting on numbers, because the numbers weren't great, or at the very least weren't growing as much as they thought they would or should. So there's been a real issue within Xbox for a long time, for years and years. And it just seems like at some point Satya sat down with Phil and was like, hey, we'll let you buy Activision Blizzard. We'll let you do that. We'll do that. That makes sense. But we're going to approach this differently. We're going to treat it the same way we've treated Microsoft Word, the same way we've treated ChatGPT, the same way we've approached all this other stuff, which is to just simply distribute software everywhere we can manage. And if that's on a rival's device, okay, but they do it. Like it's the difference between basically Microsoft and Apple. Like Microsoft will release their apps on Mac. That's fine. But you're not getting Final Cut Pro on Windows. You're not getting Pages on Windows. You're not getting that stuff. Probably for the best. Pages kind of sucks, but still, you're not getting that. You're not getting that. Instead, you see Microsoft bringing Word, PowerPoint, pretty much any app that they have. You can even sideload Windows through Parallels or through a separate boot on a Mac device, and they don't have a problem with that. But getting Mac running on Windows is a bit of a chore, let's just say. Not running on Windows, running on non-Apple hardware, I should say. Running on like Intel chips and stuff. Anyway, with all this, it's just Microsoft is looking at this whole thing and just realizing that it's not working. You got to change it, and so they're doing it.